Okay, so we're starting the seventh perek. Daf Ayin Amid Aleph 78-2. So the first din in the Mishnah is related to something we discussed already, relatively recently. If someone made a vow that his wife was prohibited from getting benefit from him, so that means he can't pay for her food, because if he buys her food, she's benefiting from him. So ad shloshim yom yamid parnas, for up to 30 days, he could set up someone who will feed her. But Rashi says that he's a shliach, and the Gemara is going to say, well, if she's not allowed to benefit from him, she's not allowed to benefit from his shliach either. But yoser mikan yotav eating suva. But if it seems that if the vow was for less than 30 days, that's what happens. Or the question is, what if, let's say, he makes the vow for 6 months? So do we say that for the first month, he can set up a shliach to feed her? Or since the whole term of the vow is going to be more than 30 days, do we say immediately they'd have to get divorced? So Yotziv eating ksuva. So you get divorced, and he has to give her the ksuva, because the need that they have to get divorced is not from her fault. So she keeps her ksuva. She didn't do anything that she should lose her ksuva. Rabbi Huda Omer B'Yisrael Chodesh Echad Yikayim V'Sheni Ushnayim Yotzi V'Eating ksuva. Rabbi Yehuda says if it's a non-Kohen, when he says Yisrael, it includes a Levi. But a non-Kohen, for 1 month they stay married, and in the second they have to get divorced, and he pays her ksuva. The Kohen Shnayim Yikayim Ushloshi Yotzi V'Eating ksuva. But if it's a Kohen, they stay married for 2 months, and then in the third, he has to divorce her and give her the ksuva. So the reason is, I think we mentioned this last week when we did the first din of the Mishnah. A Kohen is not allowed to remarry even his own divorcee. So since if they get divorced, they're divorced permanently. So we give an extra month. Maybe they could find a way out of his neder, to find a chacham to be mater neder him or whatever. So for a Kohen, Rabbi Yehuda says we have 2 months. But you can't reconcile, because in this case he made a vow. So the only way that they can get out of it is if he finds a chacham, a sage, who can find a way to get him out of his, like, hataras nedarim. But for real nedarim, it's not necessarily so easy as our hataras nedarim only works for vows that were nebulous enough or crazy enough.
So
if he gave a get, that's it. But the vow would still be in effect. Let's say if he said it's for 6 months. So if after the 6 months they'd want to get remarried to each other, if he's not a Kohen, they'd be allowed to get remarried after the time of the neder is done. Yeah. I assume the reason is so he has more time to ask a chacham to try to find a way out of his neder.
I assume was a Kohen, because his last name was Kohen.
Did they have any kids after that?
No.
So it may have just,
Second time.
yeah, after the second time.
No.
So then,
Oh, no.
so then none of the kids would have. So there would have been any problems. I mean, it would have been an avera.
Yeah.
But not just. I mean, a regular level, not a kares or pieces
Okay.
based it.
Okay.
It's a losase. It's a eating tray.
Okay. Yeah, I was always curious about that.
So that's the beginning of Parshas Emor. Isha zona v'chalala lo yikachu, Isha grusha meisha lo yikachu. It's a regular losase. So if they would have had kids after that, the kids would have been halala. They wouldn't be mamzerim, but they would be a chal.
And 1 kid for the first go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's no problem. So if she would have gotten married to someone else, even if the husband was Yisrael, they're never allowed to get remarried. That's in Parshas Ki Seitze, I think. That if she got remarried, she's not allowed to remarry her original husband. Hamader is ishto shelo titom echon mikol haperos. So the way that the words of the Mishnah appear to me seems that if he made a neder that she's not allowed to taste a fruit. Now, if I would make a neder that someone else can't do anything, it's usually out of my control, so it doesn't mean anything. So Rashi says that this is a case where she said, and it's not that I'm going to have a certain type of fruit, but any fruits that so-and-so has, she was prohibiting on herself. And we know from Parshas Matos, which we'll be reading in a couple months, or a drop less than that, that if a woman makes a vow, the husband, when she's married, the husband can annul the vow. So in this case, the husband did not allow the vow. So let's say she's not going to eat, she said, I'm not going to eat apples, or I'm not going to eat pomegranates. Yeah, it's a real neder. She made a neder. I don't know. She watched the daytime talk show, and it says that there's a rare thing that you get some rare fungus growing in your eardrum if you eat a fruit. So she said, "Oh, okay, I'm never gonna eat that," and she made a neder.
But I think husband can know it.
But he didn't. He has a day to annul it, and he didn't annul it. Yotzev eating ksuva. They get divorced, but he pays the ksuva to her. Rabbi Yehuda Mir Yisrael Yom Echad Yikayim. Rabbi Yehuda says for Yisrael they could stay married for one day. Shnayim Yotzev eating ksuva. On the second day they get divorced and he pays her the ksuva. With a kohen Shnayim Yikayim Shlosha Yotzev eating ksuva. And if it's a kohen, for 2 days they stay married after this vow, and for 3 they get divorced and he has to pay her the ksuva. Hamadas isha shelo tiskache pe'echad mikol haminin. So similar to that, she said that she was not going to use a certain type of perfume. So Yotivi thinks Suva, they have to get divorced and the husband pays her the Suva. Rabbi Yossi, and again, this is a case where she made the vow and he didn't annul it. Rabbi Yossi Omer ba'aniyos shelo nasan kitzva uva ashiro shloshim yom. Rabbi Yossi says with non-wealthy people, there's no set time, meaning they don't have to get divorced. Excuse me. If she didn't give an end time to her vow, then he has to divorce. Then that's when Rabbi Yossi says, Rabbi Yossi is going on the machlokes between the no, it's a new case. What I'm saying. Rabbi Yossi says, "Banil shelo nasan kitzva, uvashiro shloshim yom." So they have to get divorced if she never made an end time to the vow. If it's from a wealthy family, if it was for less than 30 days, they don't have to get divorced. But if it's for more than 30 days, then that she's not going to use a certain type of perfume, then they have to get divorced. So that's the Mishnah. There's 3 cases in Mishnah.
Right.
The first case is he made a vow that she cannot benefit from him. So because he's obligated to support her, so they can't stay married, or they stay up for 30 days and they establish someone, trustee, whatever, who's gonna pay for 30 days, and then they get divorced. So we have the machlokas about Cohen or not Cohen. The second case is she said, she made a netter that she was never gonna eat an apple again. So, and he didn't annul it. Oh, because in this, we're gonna talk about cases where one of the spouses does something and they have to get divorced. Does she get to keep her ksuva or not? So we're saying that even if it's one species of fruit, it's not a way to live. You can't live your life having been restricted against not having a fruit. Now, I don't know if, nowadays, if someone would say that they'd make a netter that they were not going to eat a star fruit, a star fruit that, or they take a rare thing, but what about someone, let's say, is allergic to pineapple and they make a netter not to take to eat pineapple? Well, they'd get very sick from it anyway. So,
That one reason why you brought up? Remember, the time everything was arranged there.
right. Probably not. But we had some stuff from what, in the second perek maybe, or the third perek, where she said some things and then she couldn't stay married to him anymore. Maybe, but probably not. But also, we try to stay very far away from making nadarim. And I guess in those days it was a much more common thing. Okay, Gemara. In the art scroll, it looks like it's 78. Oh no. 78.3 at the beginning of 78.3. So the Gemara asks, "V'keven de mishubad la hechi matzi mader la." Since he's obligated, he's mishubad, he's indebted, or he's obligated to provide food for her. Hechi matzi mader la. How can he make this neder? Kol kamini demafki lili shibude. Is it within his ability to get rid of this obligation that he has? Because we learned in the Mishnah, konim she'eni osa leficha, eino tzarich lahafer. So we saw this earlier on Daf Nun Tes and Samach Vav. If she made a vow that she was not going to work for him for his benefit, eino tzarich lahafer. He doesn't have to annul the vow because it can't take effect, because part of the marriage is that anything that she would make goes to the husband. Alma keved de mishab delay, lav kol kamina de mafkila shibude. Since she is obligated to him, it's not lav kol kamina. It's not in her ability to get rid of that obligation that she has to him. So hachanami keved de mishubad la. Since he's obligated to feed her, lav kol kamina de mafkila shibude. He shouldn't have the ability to cancel his obligation towards the vow. Meaning, in some situations, the vow doesn't take effect. If you want to take a vow against something that's in the Torah, you can't. And all other types of vows don't take effect. If you want to do something if you take a vow that you're going to jump 10 feet in the air, it's impossible to jump 10 feet in the air. So the vow, well, actually, no, that's not a vow. That's a condition. That's a t'nai for a sale. But you can't take a vow to stop yourself from an obligation that you're already obligated in. So the Gemara says, because he's able to tell her, we learned this then, that if he doesn't want to support her, he can say, I'm not going to support you, and when you work, you get to keep the money for yourself. So since he's able to say, if I'm not gonna support you, so the money that you make, you keep. It's as if he said, you can take your earnings and get to keep your earnings in place of your food. So So because there is a way out that he doesn't have to, because there's a way out that he doesn't have to provide her food, so therefore the neder does take effect. The im isa lahad Rav Huna amarav, but what about the statement of Rav Huna in the name of Rav? The Amar Rav Huna amarav, yichol isha shetamer labayla eini nizonis ve'eini yosa. A woman, so what we just said was from the husband's perspective. Rav Huna said, and we saw this, a woman could tell her husband, eini nizonis ve'eini yosa. I'm not gonna take support from you, and I'm not gonna work either. And konim shani yosa leficha. So if she would, so then because of that halacha, if she would take a vow that she's prohibiting anything that he makes for him to his mouth. So konam is like a prohibition. Shani osa, the thing that I'm gonna make, leficha, it's prohibited to your mouth. Meaning he's not allowed to get benefit from what she did. Amai eino tzarach lahafer. Why does the Mishnah say that he doesn't have to annul that vow? Lema mitoch sheichol lomer eini nizonos ve'eini osa, nasik mishomer slo eini nizonos ve'eini osa. According to our answer, it ends up that we have a different question. So since we could say he has the potential to make this declaration, therefore the vow takes place, we have a Mishnah from the other person, Rav Huna Amar, Rav said that the woman is allowed to say, I'm not going to take support for you and I'm not going to work for you. But we have a Mishnah that if she prohibits her earnings to her husband, and he's not allowed to get benefit from her earnings, why would the husband have to annul that statement? According to the logic that we just said, because she can say, I'm not gonna take your food and I'm not gonna work for you, let her say that, and therefore her vow that she's prohibiting her husband from her earnings, that vow should take effect, and we should make the husband annul it. Why does the Mishnah say that we don't have to annul it? So the Gemara can't answer that. So therefore, the first answer that the Gemara gave is it doesn't work. We can't say because he has the potential to say, I'm not going to feed you and you get to keep your money, but because they didn't say that, we're not able to say that the vow would take effect. So Ella lo temanasa Ella ba'omer tzi masidach b'nosayach. We can't say it that it's as if he said it. It has to be in a case where he actually had told her that I'm gonna not feed you, but you will be able to keep all the money that you earn. So because it's in a case where they already made that arrangement, therefore, if he makes the vow, then the vow takes effect. Because what was the question? The question is, because he's already indebted to her to support her and give her food and clothes, his vow doesn't take effect. So now the Gemara answers, because it's a case where he got out of that obligation by saying, I'm not going to feed you, but you get to keep your own money. So now that he doesn't have an obligation to, if he would make a vow that she's not allowed to benefit from him, the vow does take effect. So now the Gemara asks, Ihachi parnas lamala. If so, how is he able to set up a trustee who Rashi said in the Mishnah is his agent, his shliach? Because if he's not allowed to benefit from her, he's not allowed to benefit from her through a third party either. She's still benefiting from him. I think I said that backwards. If he made a vow that she's not allowed to benefit from him, if he's paying a third party and that third party is paying her, she's still benefiting from him. So how could the Mishnah say that we set up this third party, the trustee, that the husband's paying to support her? So the Gemara says, "V'lo safka," where her salary, her earnings aren't enough to provide herself with the food and stuff that she needs. So there, in that case, the husband has to make up the difference. So the Gemara asks, "V'lo safka hadar kushaluduchte." But if she's not earning enough money, our question starts again. If she's not making enough money to support herself, he's not able to get out of his obligation to support her. So if she can't make enough, he still has to support her. And if he has to support her, his neder, his vow, denying her benefit from him won't take effect. So Amravashi b'mafsekas l'dvarim gedolim v'namaspekas l'dvarim ketanim. Where she earns enough money for big things, and she doesn't earn enough for little things. So what's big and what's little? Let's read a few more lines because to me it seems it wasn't what I thought. So what does it mean, small things, that she doesn't have the money for small things? Either gilabahu, if she's used to them and she uses them on a consistent and a constant basis, harigilabahu, she needs them. So the fact that she can't afford them is a big problem because it's something that it's a necessity for her. And if she doesn't usually use them, parnas lamala, then why does the husband need to provide a small stipend in order for her to buy these things? If she doesn't need it too often, she doesn't need it, so she'll go without it for right now. So the Gemara says, "Lo tzricha dergila beveis nasha become megalgila b'hadei." So the question is, so it's a case where it was something that she used when she was still in her father's house before she got married, and then when they got married, she was going without it for a little bit. The Amrale, because she was telling her husband, Ada idna delo idartan galgalina ba'adach. Before you made the neder, I was the word galgalina is almost like a galgal. I was rolling around without them. I was able to get by without them. But hasha adartan, but now that you made this vow against me, lamatzina dis galgal ba'adach. I can't go without them anymore. Now I need them again. So therefore, they're considered necessities. Okay, umay shnat shloshim yom. So why? So in this case, so it's a complicated case. So the case is the husband said, "I'm not going to feed you, but you get to keep your own earnings," and then her earnings can cover most of her expenses, but there's a small amount of expenses that they don't cover, and it's stuff that she used to use before she was married, but now since she got married, she's gone without them. But now that he has a netter, she insists on them, so he has to pay for those items, which isn't so much, but he has to pay through a third party. So the question is, why does this 30-day thing come? How come he has to make the pay for them, fund them for 30 days? Either why not? Why isn't it not at all, or why is it permanent? So ad shloshim yom lo shami bo inchi. People didn't hear that they had this this devow happen, and now she had to move out. Velozila ba milsa, and it's not embarrassing to her. But tfei shami ba inchi. But more than 30 days, people are going to find out about it. Bezila ba milsa, and it's a disgrace to her. So it has nothing to do, according to the Maskana of the Gemara, has nothing to do with trying to be matir the neder. We had a case like that in the previous perek about trying to find a chacham to be matir the neder, but that's not what this Gemara is talking about at all. Or we can say that the case is as follows. Again, the question that we're trying to answer is, how could he make, because he's obligated to support her, how if he makes a vow that that she's not allowed to benefit from him, it doesn't take effect because his obligation to her comes before the vow, so the vow can't stick to anything. How does the vow even take effect in the first place? That's the question. So now we're giving a second answer. Shedirik Shehia Rusa. He made the vow against her when they were only Erison. He had given her the ring, but they didn't have chuppah yet. So because he didn't have to pay for her, because he didn't have to support her when they had Erison, the vow could take effect. The Gemara says, the Gemara says, Arusa mi isa mizone. But at Arusa, he doesn't have to feed her at all. So why does it talk of a case that he has to pay the third party? The answer doesn't make sense then, because it's true he's not obligated to support her then, but then why does he have to pay the third party to fund to give her money for these things? So the Gemara says shehigia zman v'lo niso, because 12 months had passed from when they had Erison, and it's time for them to do chuppah, and he didn't do chuppah. We learned in the Mishnah, and we had this all the way at the very beginning, daf Gimel or daf Beis even of the Masechta. Higia zman v'lo niso. If the time for chuppah came and he didn't do chuppah yet, ochlos mishalo. She eats from her husband's, even though they didn't do chuppah yet, but he has to support her and give her food. The ochlos betruma. And if he is a Kohen, she's allowed to eat truma as that food. So that's the case. So now 12 months have passed and he didn't do chuppah, so he's obligated to support her for the food through the trustee, the third party. So why does he only have to put up provide for 30 days and not more than 30 days? So ad shloshim yom avid shliach shlichuse. Until 30 days, the shliach will do his act of agency that he's obligated to do. Tfei lo avid shliach shlichuse. But more than 30 days, he is not going to do that. So I guess she's not going to be, we can't trust that he's going to keep on supporting her, so they can't stay married more than 30 days. The Ibai Sema, so that's the second answer of the Gemara. So it's a little bit less tenuous, but it's also a very limited case. It's a case where when they after Kedushin, he made the vow, and now it was 12 months and he didn't do chuppah, but because it's 12 months has passed, he's obligated to feed her. So he feeds her so he has to feed her through a trustee. And the reason that it's 30 days is because we don't trust that the shliach is gonna keep sending her the money, forwarding her the money for more than 30 days. That's where the 30 days limit comes from. The Ibai Sema, now we try to give a third explanation for the Mishnah. She direk she arusa v'nises. He made the neder when after they gave the ring, but before chuppah v'nises, and then they had chuppah. So because at the time of the vow, he didn't have to support her, the vow took effect, and even after the chuppah took effect, the vow stays. Obviously, there was no time limit, whatever. So the Gemara asks, Nises hasavar v'kibla. If she accepted a chuppah, knowing that he made the vow, she is accepting her act of going to the chuppah shows that she knows about it and she's okay with it. So then why do they have to get divorced? She clearly is okay with it. The Amr Kisvura Nishani Yachal Akaba. Because she could say, I thought that I'd be able to live this way, but Achshav Inani Yachal Akaba. But now she sees I'm not able to live this way. I can't stay married to him. So the Gemara says, Emer Dabrinan Hachi. When do we make such a svara that I thought I could be okay with it, but now I see that I can't? Gabi Mumin. That's in regard to blemishes. That if she's aware of certain blemishes and she said, I know that he has these blemishes, but I'm okay with it. But then when they actually get married, she says, I can't deal with these blemishes. Then we allow her, we say they have to get divorced because that's something that she wouldn't have known completely before they got married if she really could have handled it or not. But do we say that this statement in regard to her being supported by him? No, we don't say that. So it's better to say, like we said earlier. So the two earlier answers that we gave, that's the way we'll explain the Mishnah. Okay, 2 dots. We're a little bit past halfway down. We're 70b3, the first column, about halfway down. Ad shloshim yom. So for 30 days, for up to 30 days, you make a parnas. You make a trustee who's going to forward the money to her. So the Gemara asks, so parnas lav shechusay ka'avid, but isn't this trustee his agent? So what does it matter if he vowed that she's not allowed to benefit from him? What does it matter if it's directly from him or if he channels it through a third party? She's still benefiting from him, so it should be in violation of the vows. Everything okay there? Rav Huna ba'omer kol hazan eino ma'afsid. So it's a case where he said if anyone does send money, send food to my wife, they're not going to lose. They're not going to lose out. So that's a way of code of saying that he was going to reimburse them. But so therefore, it's not as if he's paying for it because he didn't tell them to do it. They're doing it by their own, even though they know that they're going to be made whole by the husband. But the Gemara asks, But even if he says whoever's going to pay her is not gonna, is not going to be losing anything, that's a code word of saying I'm going to pay you back. So isn't that a way of making a shliach without actually saying I'm making the shliach? He's still making that person an agent when he says this. And we have a Mishnah that says like this about Nan, because we learned in a Mishnah, I think it's the sixth perek of Gittin. Mi shahaya mushlach babor. V'amar kolosh me'akolo yichtov get le'ishto. Hare'elo yichtov uv'yitnu. If someone's stuck in a deep pit, he can't see anyone, he calls out, whoever can hear me, please write a get to my wife. The person who hears it is allowed to write the get and give it to his wife, meaning he doesn't think he's going to survive. And so he wants her to be divorced. So maybe he has a brother and either she have to do yibum or chalitza, or maybe they don't know where the brother is and she'd be in limbo. So it's more beneficial for her to get divorced. So obviously a get you need the names in it. So he says, Shmuel Ben Beryl is giving this get to divorce his wife, Dina Basleya, and give it to her. So the fact that the person who hears is allowed to give the get, that means that he's a full-fledged shliach of the husband. What? Oh, you're right. Dina Bas Yaakov, not Dina Basleya. Thank you. So Hachi Hasha, the Gemara says, well, what are you comparing? Hasam Ka'amar Yichtov. He says, whoever hears me, write the get. Hacha Mia Ka'amar Yazun. Here did he say someone should support my wife? He said, Kol Hazan Ka'amar, whoever supports her. So the Gemara is trying to say that that Kol Hazan, whoever will feed my wife, isn't direct enough to one person, therefore it's not making him into an agent. That's what the Gemara seems to be doing right here. So then the Gemara asks, Amar Rav Ami, B'dleika hitiru lomar hamachaba kol hamachaba eno mafsid. So if there was a fire on Shabbos and there's no eruv, so the person might have whatever it is there might be. We're talking about a case where he has food and it's going to make a big loss in the fact that he can't carry it outside on Shabbos. So if he announces whoever extinguishes the fire is not going to lose out, meaning, let's say in those days, you had to shut the water from a well, so there is labor involved to replenish the water supply that they had, or the labor of dumping the water, whatever it is, basically saying whoever extinguishes the fire, I'll make sure that, you'll be compensated for your efforts. That's what he meant. So therefore, if there's a non-Jew around who hears this, the non-Jew will extinguish the fire and will save the guy's property. At first, I thought it was talking. I just said I thought it was talking about to take the food. It's more than this. I just thought to take the food. There's no eruv. His house might burn down. So if he says whoever will extinguish it, they're not going to suffer any financial harm for having done this. So meaning he's trying to save his house from burning down. So b'deleka l'mutemai, when Rav Ami says in a fire, would they Chachamim allowed the person to say in a nebulous term, whoever extinguishes the fire is not going to lose out. So what case is that excluding? What's a case where you're not allowed to say something like this? Lav mu'ute ki agavna. Wouldn't it be a case like this where whoever supports my wife isn't going to lose out? It's a very similar formulation. So can't we learn from Rav Ami's statement that the only heter is, so it's when you say this and a non-Jew listens, you didn't appoint the non-Jew as your agent, but in other cases it still is like you're making that person an agent. So the Gemara said, "Lo lemute shar isurim de Shabbos." It only means in regard to other isurim of Shabbos, like whoever. I was. We went. Chamta could tell you on a trip on Sunday, and one of the things from an old place, they had a real old-fashioned loom where they were weaving stuff. They were weaving we went near Aurora to Blackberry Farm. and they had a woman there who was spinning wool into thread, and then they had a loom, and the guy was with the pedals and throwing the thing back and forth and banging the thing. So it's great. I was all excited. He's like, "How do you know so much?" I said, "Which is the warp and which is the woo?" He's like, "How do you know so much about it?" I said, "Oh, it's in the Talmud. It's one of the there's like 5 of the 39 creative activities on Shabbos on the Sabbath we're not allowed to do is we have to weave. We're not allowed to weave. You're not allowed to set up. You're not to set up the warp. You're not to set up the oof. You're not allowed to put the thing together. There's a whole bunch of categories." So basically, he said it takes 15 to 18 hours to set everything up before you're even able to weave. And the way they weave at this place, so it's what did he say? I wrote it down somewhere. It was like 192 threads this way and 192 threads this way, and so you're making it's about this wide right now. I think it was 192, and they're 13 yards each of the 192 by 192 is 13 yards long, because that's as big as their thing could take, or their holding thing could take, and also it takes them a month and a half to weave it based on their thing over there. So it's schedule wise it works out, but it's 15 to 18 hours to set up the whole thing to start weaving. So it was so for me I enjoyed it because it's so much of Hilchos Shabbos is about that. And so not too many of us actually know how to weave anymore to know what all these malachos are. You finished? Yeah. Okay, good. So lemut shari yisurim de Shabbos. So I said, so if my loom, let's say there was an earthquake on Shabbos, and my loom got the threads got removed from the thing, and I know it's going to be it's going to take me a lot of time to set up the threads again. So I said, whoever sets up my loom is not going to lose out. So if a goy hears and sets up the loom for you, so we're saying that you're not allowed to do that for Shabbos, only in the case of fire, because we're worried that you're going to be machal Shabbos to extinguish the fire by yourself if we don't allow you this heter to announce whoever will extinguish the fire for me isn't going to lose out. So there's a little bit from the question of the Gemara. It seems that making this statement would make the person into an agent. So there is a machlokas. Arshko mentioned something, but the Balatanya, the first Lubavitcher Rebbe, his opinion was that so there's a halacha, Amira Lagoy, asking Goy to do a malacha for you on Shabbos is prohibited. Why is it? So the Balatanya, I think, says because you're making the non-Jew your agent. So if an agent is doing it, so ain't shlich devar avera, but because of your agency, it's enough that part of the illegal act of Shabbos is being done because of you. So the Gemara here, my initial feeling is that from the question of the Gemara, it makes it sound like this statement is that normally asking the guy to do something would make him your shliach on Shabbos. But from the answer, I'm not so sure. But in spite of that, there are poskim, including the first Lubavitcher Rebbe, who did learn that telling a goy not to do something on your behalf on Shabbos is like making a shliach. There's a Meshech Chachma. I'm not sure. I don't remember where the Meshech Chachma is. I think it's in Devarim, but I might be wrong. And it's based on the Tosfos in the middle of Shabbos. And according to that, they're saying Hashem created the world. It's improper for a goy to do malacha either. Hashem created the world for everyone, and so he doesn't talk about the idea of shlichus, but it seems that some people hold that it's its own halacha that you can't ask a goy to do something for you on Shabbos, even though it has nothing to do with shlichus, that he's not becoming your agent. It's still you're not allowed to have him do malacha for ask him to do malacha for you on Shabbos. Okay, so now we're on 70b4 at the very top. Masav Rava, but Rava asks against this. Hamuder hanamechavero ve'ein lo mayochal. So these are other cases where you're making a hint. Whoever does this is not going to lose out, and we're saying that whether there is shlichus or not shlichus. So if Reuven said, he was so mad at Shimon or whatever, he made a vow. Shimon is I'm not, none of my money Shimon is not allowed to have any benefit from me. But then what happened? Ve'ein lo mayochal. Shimon has no food to eat. But Ruvain doesn't want him to starve to death. So he can go to Shimon's regular grocer and say, tell him, Ish ploni mutar hanami meni. Shimon there's been a vow, he's not allowed to get anything from him. So I don't know what I could do for him. So who knows? And the storekeeper could give him uvav and no tamizah. And then the storekeeper can go to Ruvain and say, here's the bill. So in these cases of hinting like that, in this case, the hint is enough to tell the storekeeper to act. And then so it ends up that Shimon is benefiting from Reuven, even though Reuven made the vow. So hachi hu deshari. So only in this case it's motor because he didn't say I'm not going to pay you back. He just said he's starving and I don't know what to do for him. He didn't say that he's gonna make you whole or this or that. So the only reason it's mutter, according to the question here that Rabbi is asking, is because he didn't say whoever is going to help Shimon isn't going to lose out. So here he didn't even say that much. So because of that, Rabbi says hachihu deshari, it's mutter because in that case, but if he would say more than that, whoever feeds Shimon isn't going to lose out. That would be a prohibited form of Shimon making benefiting from Ruvain's from Reuven. So the Gemara says, no, in this case, he could have said kolazon eno mafsid, and that's not a problem. Lomi boy kamer, but that Mishnah is saying not just this, but even this. Lomi boy kolazon eno mafsid, the la'ama kamer. That it's not a question that it's okay that if you say whoever feeds him isn't going to lose out because you didn't tell any particular person to do it. But because this is the grocer that Shimon goes to, and so by the fact that he's telling this to Shimon is it's not explicit, but it's a pretty direct instruction where he's telling Shimon's grocer, go give him food on credit and I'll pay the bill. Commander Amar Zil Havle at dummy. I might think it's as if he was directly telling Shimon's grocer, give these groceries to Shimon. Kamash Malan, that it's not like he was telling Shimon directly. So the fact that when you say Kol Hazan Eino Mafsid, we're saying that because you're not directing your statement to any particular person, so it's not like you're appointing someone a shliach. And again, going back to the case of the get, he didn't even know if anyone was out there hearing him. So he wasn't directing himself to any particular person either. Gufa, we had just quoted a Mishnah, Hamur Hanamechavero, Ve'eno Mayochal. If the example that I gave, the names that I gave, Reuven said, Shimon is not allowed to get any benefit from me. But now Shimon is starving, literally, he doesn't have anything to eat. Reuven could go to Shimon's grocer, but Omer Lo, and tell him Ish Poni Mutar Hanami Meni. Shimon is because of a vow is not allowed to get any benefit from me. I don't know what to do for him. Who knows in lo so the grocer can give food to Shimon and then go to Reuven and get paid from Reuven. Beisoliv knows. What about if Shimon had a house that it needed to get built or finished being built, Ugdera Ligdor, or a fence that needed to be put up, Visadeo Ligdor, he had a field full of crops and it needed to be harvested, and he has no money. or ability to do any of these things. We're not talking about all of them. It's if he had this or this or this. So Reuven could go to workers who usually work for Shimon and say va'omer lahen and tell them ish ploni mutar hanami meni. Shimon is barred by a vow to get any benefit from me. Ve'enyo dema esalon. I don't know what to do for him. Hemos and imo. So they can work for Shimon uvan v'lot litzcham rizeh, and then they can go to Reuven, and Reuven will pay them. So it's a similar halacha, except it's not in regard to food, but that's the rest of the Mishnah. And then the Mishnah continues more. They were traveling, and one guy packed a good lunch and he had enough food, and the other one didn't. And we're talking about you're in the middle of nowhere right now. It's not like today that you could find somewhere to eat at. So if they had at least one other person with them, Reuven could give the food to Levi, and then Levi knows that that Reuven gave it to him to give it to Shimon. So then Shimon could take it from Levi and eat, and it was permitted for him to eat this way. It was not in violation of the vow. And if no one else is there, there's no third person that Reuven can give the food to. He could put it on a rock or on a fence, but Omer and say, these are ownerless for whoever wants. And Shimon could take the food, and it's permitted because he made it hefker, even though we know he made it hefker in order that Shimon would be able to benefit from it. It's not considered that Shimon is benefiting from Reuven. For Rabbi Yossi Oser, but Rabbi Yossi says that you're not allowed to make this hefker situation because that's too. We know that's just an evasion technique. We know that that's not really. It's just a trick. So Amarava, my time Rabbi Yossi. What's the reason Rabbi Yossi doesn't allow Reuven to say this is ownerless? Gezerah mishum, as we go to Ayin Aleph and Aleph, Ma'aseh de Beis Charon, because of the incident in Beis Charon. So in Beis Charon, there was so someone was getting married. Now the father had been real upset at the grandfather and had made a neder from him. So the father of the chassan wanted the boy's grandfather to be there. So he said, I'm reading here in note 1 in the Art Scroll 71a, that the courtyard and the banquet are given to you as a gift, but only so the father gave the house and the yard, the courtyard where the wedding was happening to a third party on condition that he was doing it for the fact that the grandfather could come and at the wedding. So then the person said, if you're giving it to me, I'm making it hektish. I'm donating it to the Beis HaMikdash. And then the father of the chassid got real mad. I'm not giving you, I didn't give it to you to give it to the Beis HaMikdash. So we know that it wasn't a real gift. He was only doing it to get out of the vow. So to make it hefker when no one else is there, it's what do we call it? It's too transparent that he's just trying to get around the vow. So therefore we say you're not allowed to, in such a case, because of the vow, you're not allowed to help Shimon by making your food ownerless for him. Okay, Ayin Aleph Amud Aleph. The first line is 2 dots. 71a1. The second line at the beginning at the left column. Rabbi Huda Mer B'Yisrael Chodesh Echad. Rabbi Huda said if the husband is Yisrael, they stay for 1 month that he's supporting her through the third party, and in the second month they get divorced. If it's a Kohen, for 2 months. For 2 months, they stay. They stay married, and then the third month they have to get divorced, and he pays a ksuva. Hainu Tanakama. B'Yisrael Chodesh Echad. So Hainu Tanakama. He's saying the same thing as the Tanakama. So Kohenet, so the question is, well, we know that the Tanakhama didn't say mention anything about a Kohen, about the husband being a Kohen. So the Gemara at this point is feels that if he was only arguing about a Kohen, he should have only said for a Kohen it's 2 months. He doesn't have to repeat the thing about the Yisrael if he holds the same thing as the Tanakhama about Yisrael. Because the Mishnah says if you may Hamadar Asishim Milhenos at Shloshim Yom Yamid Parnas Yotzim Yotzim Yiting Suva. So for 30 days you have to make this trustee to pay the bills. Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Yisrael Chodesh Echad Yekayim Mishnam Yotzi. So the first statement of Rabbi Yehuda is saying the same thing as the Tanakhama. B'kohen Shnaim Yekayim V'Shlosha Yotzi Yiting Suva. So we know that part of Rabbi Yehuda is different than the Tanakhama. But the Gemara at this point is trying to think that the first statement is also saying something that the Tanakhama isn't. And it doesn't see anything. It's saying, well, that line is saying the same thing as the Tanakhama. So Amar Abaye Kohenes Asalashma'ina. No, the whole Chiddush is only about the second line, that if it's the wife of a Kohen, he gets an extra month. Rava Amar, but Rava says Chodesh Male v'Chodesh Chaser Ike Benayu. There is a difference between the Tanakhama and Rabbi Yossi, and that has to do if it's a 29-day month or a 30-day month, because the Tanakhama explicitly said Ad Lamed Yom till 30 days, and Rabbi Yehuda said in the word of Chodesh in terms of a month. So because he said Chodesh, Rabbi Yehuda would hold that she doesn't necessarily get the money for 30 days. So Tosos discusses in Yevamos, the Re says that whenever the pasuk says the word Chodesh, it means 30 days. But in things that are not in Chumash, when you say the word Chodesh, it only means 29 days. So this is important. There's a principle that that there's a certain way that the Torah speaks, there's a certain way that the Mishnah speaks, and they're different. So this would be manifest itself according to this Re, that if you say the word Chodesh in the Torah, it always means 30 days. But if it's in the Mishnah, Chodesh means 29 days. But so Tosfos asks, if the Re is true, then the Gemara should have known this. It should have been so obvious that that the Gemara should have known that there's a difference between the Tanakhama and Rabbi Yehuda, because the Tanakhama said 30 and Rabbi Yehuda only said Chodesh. So then he tries to give reasons for that. But that's an important thing to know, that if according to the Re, whenever the Gemara says, the Mishnah or the Gemara says Chodesh, it only means 29 days, not 30 days. Rav said, Lo shano ella b'mefaresh. This halacha is only when the term of the vow was explicitly stated. Aval b'stam, but if it didn't have an end date, yoti la'alter v'yiting ksuva. They have to get divorced immediately. I mentioned this in the Mishnah as possibility, so the Gemara talks about it right here. But if he didn't say, he says she can't get any benefit from me. So if he said he can't get any benefit from me for a week, okay, you establish the parnas according to the cases that we spoke about. Either that the first case was that he wasn't going to support her and she was going to keep her own money, and there was incidental things that she was used to that she used in her father's house, but when she got married, she had been going without them and now she needed them. Or the second answer was he made the vow when they were after Erison, and then they had chuppah. They didn't have chuppah, but it's been 12 months, so now he's obligated to support her. So in these cases is only if the vow if it's less than 30 days, they make a parnas. But if he makes it, he didn't say an end date, or he said a very long end date, 6 months, or even 2 months, or 32 days, or 10 years, or forever, Yotzi la'alter v'yiting suba. They immediately get divorced. You don't wait 30 days or a month. Ushmuel Amar, but Shmuel says, Afilu b'stam lo yotzi, shema yimtza pesach l'nidro. But Shmuel says, even if he gave it an unspecified, he didn't say how long it is, they don't get divorced, because maybe he will be able to find a chacham to be mater his netter. We saw this in the previous perek. Shmuel said the same thing. And Samach Aleph Amud Aleph, I think. It looks like. Is this something else? Oh, it's on base. I can't find it here. That was where if he made a vow that that he wasn't going to have marital relations with her. So that was a Mishnah on Samach Aleph Amud Beis. So the Gemara says, zimna. But we already had this machlokas between Rav and Shmuel about this on a different case. Did not, because we learned in the Mishnah, and that's the one on Samach Aleph Amud Beis. Hamar Sishim L'Tasha Shemitah, if he prohibited his wife from benefiting from him for marital relations, Beishamei Omrim Shtei Shabbosos. Beishamei says, if it's for 2 weeks, they don't have to get divorced. Beis Hillel Omrim Shabbos Achas. Beis Hillel says, even if the vow is only for 1 week, they have to. If it's for more than a week, they have to get divorced. But Amar Rav, and Rav said machlokas b'mafarish. The machlokas is when he specifies the term of abistam, but if he doesn't have a length of how long he was prohibiting her, yotzi la'alter v'yiting suva, they have to get divorced immediately, and he has to pay her ksuva. Ushmuel Amar afilu b'stam nami lo yotzi shema yimtza pesach l'nidro. And Shmuel says even if he didn't give an end date, they don't have to get divorced right away either, because maybe in the meantime he can find a chacham who will find a loophole or an opening that they could be mater netter. So the machlokas between Rav and Shmuel seems to be exactly the same machlokas Rav and Shmuel over there. So the Gemara says tzricha. No, if I would have had it in one of these cases, I wouldn't have known it to the other case. Therefore, they had to explicitly argue about it in both cases. If we only had the case on Samach Aleph about where he was prohibiting her from marital relations, maybe Rav said they have to get divorced right away because there's no third party that he can do in that case. But in this case, when it's money, the efshar b'farnes, emamoda l'shmuel. I might think that Rav would agree with Shmuel that for a few weeks, the husband could have a trustee or a third party to pay. He'll give the money to him and he'll give the money to her. I might think that he agrees to Shmuel. So therefore, we have to know in this case that Rav also argues on Shmuel and holds they get divorced right away. Be it Marbahan, if we only had the machlokus between Rav and Shmuel in this case, I might say Shmuel only says wait because maybe you could be mater netter in this case in our Mishnah because you can, in the meantime, you could have a third party pay the bills. But in that case, emamoda leila Rav, because you're not able to have a third party, where we're talking about marital relations, emamoda leila Rav, he might agree with Rav over there. Tzricha, therefore, we needed the machlokas between Rav and Shmuel to be explicit in this Mishnah and in that Mishnah. Go to 2 dots. Next, Tanan, we learned in our Mishnah. Hamadar sishel sholtita mechel mikol peros. So the text sounds that he made a vow that she's not allowed to taste a certain type of fruit. He didn't say you can't eat that apple. He says you can't eat apples. So we already said in the Mishnah that for him to make a netter like that, it has no effect to prohibit her from doing from doing or not doing something. But it's a case where she made the netter and he didn't nullify it when he heard about it. So they have to get divorced and give a ksuba. Bishlam ala Rav, we understand according to Rav, because kan bistam, the neder was made without an end date, and kan ben mufarish. But in the case of the first case of the Mishnah, because our Mishnah had three cases. The first case of the Mishnah is the husband prohibited his wife from deriving any benefit from him. For 30 days. And then in the second case, it doesn't talk about a time limit. It just says, there is no time limit. So according to Rav, we can understand the difference between the first case and the second case. Because Bishlam Rav Kambistan Kambam Farish. The first case of the Mishnah was for 30 days. The second case, where she's not able to have any fruit, there's no time benefit. Shmuel Kasha, but according to Shmuel, even in that case, let them not have to get divorced right away, because maybe they could find Chacham could find a way to be matter the neder, and that the neder against her eating that type of fruit never took effect. So the Gemara says, So the Gemara says this is a case where she made the vow and he upheld it. He didn't annul it. Then he became la'ihu. So because of the fact that the husband supported it, it makes it pretty strong and hard, unlikely that we'll be able to annul it. The Kesuvos Rabbi Meir, and Rabbi Meir holds, meaning we're saying that our Mishnah is Rabbi Meir, because the Stam Mishnah, if it doesn't have an author, in general the author's Rabbi Meir. Who knows in Etzba Beit Shina, because he put a finger in between her teeth, meaning even though she was the one, and we saw this phrase earlier in the last perek also, this was in regard to he has to support the wife, or if she says, and you don't have to support me, but I have to, and I'm going to keep my money. So who knows in Etzba Beit Shina, it's as if we might say he put his head into the lion's mouth, so then when the lion bites down on it, it's his own fault for putting his head in the lion's mouth. But here it's saying he stuck his finger in her mouth, so she bit down, and so he got bit from his action. He didn't have to put it in there. He could have annulled the vow immediately and have no problems. And the fact that he didn't, now they have to get divorced, and he has to pay her ksuva. For Rabbi Meir, who knows in did Rabbi Meir really hold that way? That he's the one who made the bad situations, therefore he has to deal with the consequences. But we learned in the Brisa, if a woman made a vow that she was become a nazir, the husband found out about it and he did not annul the vow. Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Huda, Omrim, Hinasna Etzba Bein Shina. Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Huda says that she made the whole problem on herself for making the vow. So therefore, if the husband wants to annul the vow, he's allowed to. And if he said he didn't annul it, but he just said in general, I do not want a wife who's making a lot of vows, they get divorced and she does not get a ksuva because it's her fault for this situation happening, for the fact that she's making these nadarim. Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Eliezer, Omerim, but Rabbi Yosef and Rabbi Eliezer say, who knows in Etzba Shana? It's his fault. He stuck his finger in because he didn't annul it. If he wants to nullify it, he's allowed to. But if he says, instead of annulling, he says, I don't want a wife who takes a lot of vows, he does have to deal with the consequences of not annulling the vow, and he does have to pay her the ksuva. So in that case of where the wife became a Nazira, Rabbi Meir did not blame the husband for not violating it. We don't say that the husband stuck the finger in her teeth. She stuck the finger in her own mouth and then bit it off. So she has to deal with the consequences. So the Gemara says, Epoch. We must have that when we say Rabbi Huda and Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Huda said he nasna etzba ben shinaha, and Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Huda, and Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Elazar said who knows in etzba ben shinaha. We have to change that the first opinion was Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Elazar, and the second opinion was Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Huda, Omrim Huno saying, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Elazar, Omer Hinasna. But then the Gemara says, V'sav Rabbi Yossi Hinasna, but that doesn't make sense either, because Rabbi Yossi, now you're saying that Rabbi Yossi is blaming her. But now in our Mishnah, Rabbi Yossi says, Ba'niyos shalom nasan kitzva, if the wife had, she wasn't going to use a certain type of perfume, if it's a non-wealthy wife that she didn't give an end time to this vow that she wasn't going to use this certain type of besamim of perfume, Rabbi Yossi is not blaming her. Or Rabbi Yossi is blaming her, and they could get divorced. So now the way we're adjusting that Mishnah, Rabbi Yossi doesn't fit with this Rabbi Yossi. So we have to say, so based on the logic, you're going to say that we had four names in the Mishnah. We had Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Elazar. So we don't have to flip both opinions that Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda say the one thing and Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Elazar said the other. We have to say Rabbi Meir of Rabbi Yossi Amrim Huno saying Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Elazar Amr Hinasna. So we had four Tanaim. It's not so common where you have a group of two explicitly named in Mishnahs are arguing on another explicitly two. But that's what we have to say. The people who memorized the Mishnayos, they made a mistake. They put the names in the wrong place. But the Gemara says that doesn't work either. Rabbi Yehuda Hinasna. Does Rabbi Yehuda hold that we're saying that it's her own fault and she doesn't have Kesuvos? But in our Mishnah we had Rabbi Yehuda also. Rabbi Yehuda Omer B'Yisrael Yom Echad Yekayim. Rabbi Yehuda said in the case of a Yisrael, for one day they stay married, but if it's 2 days or longer, they have to get divorced. So Rabbi Yehuda also does not blame her. So according to the way that we changed it, Rabbi Yehuda did blame her. So Ema, Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi Omer Hunosin, Rabbi Elazar Omer Hinasna. So you have to say that 3 Tanaim says that it's his fault. He has to live with it. It's Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Elazar Amar Hinas, and Rabbi Elazar is the one Tana who says that it's her fault. She put her finger in her mouth and she bit it off. It's her fault. The Im Tim Salamar Zuge Zuge Kitani. But if you hold that, okay, Mela, when you had 4 names and we have 2 pairs of the Tanaim, we can mix up which 2 were in the first halacha, had the first opinion, and which 2 had the second halacha. That's okay. But Ema Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Elazar, Omrim Hinasna, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, Omer Huno saying V'hastama Delok Rabbi Meir. Or you could say that because when a Mishnah is in pairs, that's a little bit more unique, and the fact that there were 2 pairs of Tanaim arguing would be that we can't they wouldn't make a mistake and make pair say 2 Tanaim said this, 2 Tanaim said that, and we have to say, oh, they misquoted. It was 3 Tanaim said this and 1 Tana said that. So rather, you could keep it that it's Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Elazar in one opinion, and Rabbi Huda and Rabbi Yossi are the other. The Hastamad Lok Rabbi Meir, and then our Mishnah can't be like Rabbi Meir. So then there's no question between Rabbi Meir over there and the Stam Tana, the Stam Mishnah, because our Mishnah will say is not according to Rabbi Meir. We'll leave it here.